The rope around Zara Lockwood's wrists cut into her flesh as she stood upon the auction block, her honey-brown hair whipping across her face in the harsh Wyoming wind. But it wasn't the pain of the bindings or the humiliation of being displayed like cattle that broke her. It was the sight of her children's faces in the crowd, tears streaming down their dirt-smudged cheeks as they watched their mother being sold to the highest bidder. Rawlins, Wyoming Territory, 1876. The town had sprung up alongside the Union Pacific Railroad, drawing all manner good and bad to its dusty streets. Today, the bad seemed to outnumber the good as men gathered around the auction platform, eyeing Zara with expressions that made her blood run cold. "Next up, gentlemen," the auctioneer called, his voice carrying across the crowd. A fine woman, 28 years of age, strong back, good health. Comes with a small debt, but worth every penny for the right man's household. What the auctioneer failed to mention was that Zara had been widowed just 3 months prior, when her husband Daniel had been killed in a mining accident. With no way to pay the mounting debts, their small farm had been seized, and Zara, through some legal trickery she still didn't fully understand, had been bound into temporary servitude to cover what remained. Her children, Emma, age 8, and James, age 6, huddled together beside Mrs. Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife who had promised to watch them for the proceedings. "Do I hear $50?" the auctioneer called. "40," shouted a man with tobacco-stained teeth and breath that reeked of whiskey even from where Zara stood. "50," called another, a portly gentleman whose reputation for cruelty toward his servants was well known throughout Rawlins. Zara closed her eyes, feeling sick. She had been promised that her contract would allow her to keep her children with her, but looking at the men bidding, she knew those promises meant nothing. These men wanted a servant, not a mother with 2 children underfoot. $100. The new voice cut through the din, deep and clear. Zara's eyes snapped open, searching for its source. Near the back of the crowd stood a tall man she had never seen before. His broad shoulders were draped in a worn leather duster, and a hat pulled low shadowed much of his face, but she could make out a strong jaw and piercing blue eyes. "100 from Mr. Tucker Grayson," the auctioneer announced, sounding surprised. "Do I hear 125? 120, the portly man countered, looking annoyed. The stranger Tucker Grayson stepped forward through the crowd, which parted before him like water around a stone. $200, he said, his voice calm but firm. A hush fell over the gathering. $200 was more than most men in town made in 2 months. 200 going once, twice. Sold to Mr. Grayson. Zara felt her knees weaken. Who was this man? What would he want with her? And her children, what about her children? As if reading her thoughts, Tucker Grayson approached the auctioneer and spoke in a low voice. The auctioneer nodded and then raised his voice again. "The lady's debt contract includes provision for her 2 children to remain in her care. Mr. Grayson has acknowledged this condition." Relief flooded through Zara so powerfully she nearly collapsed. At least they would remain together, whatever else might come. The sheriff came forward to cut the ropes from her wrists, and Tucker Grayson signed the papers transferring her debt contract to his name. As he did, Zara finally got a good look at him. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years spent outdoors. His hands were calloused but clean, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to hard work. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat to her as the transaction was completed. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, met hers directly. "I have a wagon waiting. If you'll gather your children and whatever belongings you have, we can be on our way before sundown." Zara nodded, unable to find her voice, and hurried to where Emma and James stood with Mrs. Peterson. Emma looked at her with wide, frightened eyes while James clutched his sister's hand tightly. "Are we going with that man, Mama?" Emma asked, her voice small. Zara knelt before them, taking their hands in hers. "Yes, darling, Mr. Grayson has purchased my debt contract, but we'll be together and that's what matters." "Is he going to be mean to us?" James whispered. "I don't know," Zara answered honestly. "But we have to be brave, just like Papa taught us." Mrs. Peterson pressed a small bundle into Zara's hands. "I packed what little I could salvage from your place," she whispered. "God be with you, Zara." "Thank you," Zara murmured, fighting back tears. She took her children's hands and led them to where Tucker waited beside a sturdy wagon pulled by two healthy-looking horses. "This is all we have," she said, lifting the small bundle. Tucker nodded and helped them into the wagon without comment. James shrank back, hiding behind Zara, but Emma stared openly at the stranger who now controlled their fate. As Tucker climbed onto the driver's seat, Zara gathered her courage. "Sir, may I ask where you're taking us?" Tucker glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat. "To my ranch. It's about 20 miles outside of town." 20 miles. Far from any help if they needed it, Zara thought with a shiver. But what choice did they have? "Thank you," she said softly. "For keeping us together." Tucker gave a brief nod, then snapped the reins, and the wagon lurched forward, leaving behind the town of Rawlins and heading into the unknown. The journey passed in tense silence. The children, exhausted by the day's events, eventually fell asleep leaning against Zara, who remained vigilant, watching the stranger who had bought them. Tucker Grayson kept his eyes on the trail, occasionally scanning the horizon in the way of a man who had learned to be cautious. The sun was beginning to set, painting the vast Wyoming landscape in shades of gold and crimson. "There it is," Tucker said at last, breaking the silence as he gestured ahead. Zara followed his gaze to see a modest but well-maintained ranch house nestled at the base of a rolling hill. A barn and corral stood nearby, along with what appeared to be a bunkhouse. Several horses grazed in a fenced pasture and smoke curled from the chimney of the main house. "It's not much," Tucker said, "but it's good land." "It looks lovely," Zara replied automatically, still uncertain of what awaited them. As they approached, a man emerged from the barn, older, with graying hair and a weathered face. He raised a hand in greeting as Tucker brought the wagon to a halt in the yard. "That's Hank Miller," Tucker explained. "He helps me run the place." Hank approached the wagon, his curious gaze taking in Zara and the sleeping children. "This the widow from town you mentioned?" he asked Tucker. "Yes, Mrs. Lockwood and her children will be staying with us." Hank nodded, his expression revealing nothing. "I've got supper on. Reckon there's enough for everyone." "Thank you, Hank," Tucker said, then turned to Zara. "Let me help you down." He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Zara took it. His palm was warm and rough against hers, his grip firm but gentle as he helped her from the wagon. Then he carefully lifted each sleeping child, carrying them one at a time toward the house. "You can put them in the spare room for now," he told Zara as she followed him inside. The ranch house was simple but clean, with a large main room that served as both kitchen and living area. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a wooden table with 6 chairs stood in the center. Several doors led off from the main room, presumably to bedrooms. Tucker carried the children to one of these rooms, where a bed with a clean quilt awaited. He laid them down with surprising gentleness, and Zara covered them with the blanket. They barely stirred, overcome by exhaustion. When they returned to the main room, Hank was dishing out bowls of hearty stew. "Sit," he instructed Zara, pointing to the table. "You look ready to drop." She sank gratefully into a chair, suddenly aware of how tired she truly was. Tucker and Hank joined her, and for a few minutes they ate in silence. The stew was good beef with potatoes and carrots, seasoned simply but well. "Mr. Grayson," Zara began, setting down her spoon, "I need to understand what my duties will be here." Tucker looked up, meeting her eyes. "My ranch needs a woman's touch," he said. "Cooking, cleaning, mending, whatever you'd normally do to keep a household running. Nothing more than that. And my children, they can help as they're able. The boy's old enough to learn some chores and the girl can help you. There's plenty of space for them to play too." Zara studied him, trying to discern any hidden meaning in his words or expression. "Why did you buy my contract, Mr. Grayson? You could have hired a housekeeper without taking on 2 children as well." Tucker set down his spoon and leaned back in his chair. "I know what it's like to be separated from family," he said simply. "When I heard about your situation, I couldn't stand by and watch it happen." Before Zara could respond, Emma's voice came from the doorway. "Mama, where are we?" All 3 adults turned to see the little girl standing there, her blonde hair tousled from sleep, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Come here, sweetheart," Zara said, opening her arms. Emma ran to her, climbing into her lap. "This is our new home for a while. This is Mr. Grayson and Mr. Miller." Emma regarded the men warily. "Hello," she said in a small voice. "Hello, Miss Emma," Tucker said, his voice softer than Zara had yet heard it. "Are you hungry? Hank made some mighty fine stew." Emma nodded, and Hank immediately rose to fetch another bowl. As he set it before the child, James appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "There's plenty for you too, young man," Hank said, already reaching for another bowl. James approached cautiously, climbing into the chair beside his mother. "Is this our new house?" he asked. "For now," Zara answered, smoothing his dark hair. "Mr. Grayson has given us a place to stay while I work for him." "Like we worked on our farm?" James asked. "Something like that," Zara said with a small smile. Tucker cleared his throat. "Tomorrow I'll show you around the place," he told them. "For tonight you should rest. It's been a long day." Later, after the children had fallen asleep again in the spare room, Zara sat alone by the fire. Tucker had gone out to check on the horses, and Hank had retired to the bunkhouse. She stared into the flames, trying to make sense of the day's events and what the future might hold. The door opened, and Tucker entered, bringing with him the scent of night air and horses. He paused when he saw her, then moved to hang his hat on a peg by the door. "You should get some rest," he said, removing his duster. "I wanted to thank you properly," Zara replied. "What you did today, I can never repay you." Tucker shook his head. "There's nothing to repay. You'll work and I'll have a proper home again. It's a fair exchange. Even so, you could have left my children behind. Most would have." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the fire. "I was separated from my sister when I was 10, he said finally. "Our parents died and we had no other family. I went to one home, she to another. I never saw her again." Zara's heart constricted. "I'm sorry." Tucker shrugged as if to dismiss the old pain. "It was a long time ago, but when I heard about your situation, I couldn't let it happen to another family." "How did you know about us?" Word travels fast in a small town. "I was in Rawlins picking up supplies when I overheard talk about the widow being auctioned off." His jaw tightened. "It didn't sit right with me." "Well, I'm grateful, Mr. Grayson." "Tucker," he said, "if we're going to be living under the same roof, you might as well use my given name." Zara nodded. "Tucker then, and I'm Zara." A small smile touched his lips, softening his features. "Zara, it's a beautiful name." She felt her cheeks warm and looked down. "Good night, Tucker. Thank you again." As she rose to join her children in the spare room, Zara realized that for the first time since Daniel's death, she felt something other than despair. It was a tiny spark, barely noticeable, but it was there, a flicker of hope. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Zara woke to the smell of coffee and the low murmur of men's voices. For a moment, disoriented, she thought she was back in her own home with Daniel in the kitchen. Then reality crashed over her, and she remembered where she was and why. Emma and James still slept soundly, so she rose quietly, splashed water on her face from the basin provided, and smoothed her rumpled dress as best she could. She would need to wash their few clothes soon. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Tucker and Hank seated at the table, mugs of coffee before them. They both rose when they saw her. "Good morning," Tucker said. "Coffee?" "Yes, please," Zara replied, grateful for the courtesy. Hank poured her a mug. "Hope you slept well, madam." "As well as could be expected," she said with a small smile. "And please call me Zara." Hank nodded, returning to his seat. "I'm heading out to the north pasture today, Tucker," he said. "Those fence posts won't fix themselves." "Take it easy on that shoulder," Tucker replied. "Doc said you shouldn't strain it." Hank waved dismissively. "Doc worries too much. I've had worse." Tucker shook his head but didn't argue. "I'll be showing Mrs. Lockwood Zara and her children around today. We'll come find you for lunch." After Hank departed, Zara sipped her coffee, studying Tucker in the clear morning light. He was even more handsome than she had realized, with strong, regular features and those striking blue eyes. His dark hair curled slightly where it met his collar, and a day's growth of beard shadowed his jaw. "I thought I'd show you the ranch today," Tucker said, breaking into her thoughts, "so you can get your bearings." "That would be fine," Zara agreed. "The children will be excited to explore." As if summoned by their mention, Emma and James appeared in the doorway, still in their clothes from the previous day. "Good morning," Tucker greeted them. "Are you hungry? I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage eggs and bacon." James's eyes lit up at the mention of bacon. "Yes, please." Emma nodded agreement, though she still regarded Tucker warily. "Let me," Zara said, rising. "Where do you keep your supplies?" Tucker showed her the pantry and stepped back as she took over the kitchen. It felt good to be doing something familiar, and soon the smell of frying bacon filled the room. As she worked, Zara noticed Tucker interacting with the children. He was awkward but gentle, answering James's questions about the horses and showing Emma a carved wooden bird he took from a shelf. By the time breakfast was served, the atmosphere had lightened considerably. James was chattering excitedly about seeing the horses, and even Emma had begun to thaw, asking Tucker if there were any cats on the ranch. "2 barn cats," Tucker told her, "and they just had kittens a few weeks back." Emma's eyes widened. "Can I see them?" "Of course. We'll make that our first stop." After breakfast, they set out to tour the ranch. The main house stood at the center of the property, with the barn and corral to the west. A chicken coop sat behind the house, and various outbuildings dotted the yard. Beyond stretched pastures for the horses and cattle, and in the distance, Zara could see foothills rising toward mountains. "It's beautiful," she said as they stood in the yard, taking it all in. "It's good land," Tucker agreed. "My father claimed it 30 years ago, built the house with his own hands. I grew up here until—" He trailed off. "Until you were separated from your sister," Zara finished softly. Tucker nodded. "I came back when I was 18, found the place abandoned. Took me years to rebuild what had been lost." "You've done a fine job," Zara said, looking around at the well-maintained buildings and healthy livestock. Tucker led them to the barn first, as promised, to see the kittens. Emma was delighted, immediately sitting on the straw-covered floor to let the tiny creatures climb over her lap. James was more interested in the horses, staring wide-eyed at the tall animals in their stalls. "Have you ever ridden, James?" Tucker asked. The boy shook his head. "Papa said I was still too little." "Never too little to learn," Tucker said. I was younger than you when my father first put me on a horse. I've got a gentle mare that would be perfect for starting." James looked up at Tucker with newfound admiration. "Really? You'd teach me?" "If your mother approves," Tucker said, glancing at Zara. She hesitated. Daniel had always been protective of the children, especially James, who had been born early and was smaller than other boys his age. But she couldn't deny the joy in her son's face at the prospect. "As long as you're careful," she said finally, "and start very slowly." James whooped with excitement, and Tucker smiled a genuine smile that transformed his serious face and made Zara's heart skip a beat. "We'll take it nice and easy," he promised. "Maybe this afternoon we can have your first lesson." They continued the tour, visiting the chicken coop, where Tucker explained that collecting eggs would be one of the children's chores. The vegetable garden, sadly neglected, Zara noticed, and the workshop where Tucker repaired tack and tools. By midday, they had worked up an appetite and headed to the north pasture to find Hank. The older man was indeed mending fence and didn't appear to be favoring his shoulder as Tucker had worried. They ate a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and apples under the shade of a cottonwood tree. James peppered Hank with questions about life on the ranch, while Emma sat close to Zara, still somewhat overwhelmed by all the newness. "Is there a school nearby?" Zara asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't thought to inquire about the children's education. "About 5 miles down the road," Tucker replied. "It's just a small schoolhouse, but the teacher, Miss Franklin, is well regarded. When fall comes, we can arrange for the children to attend." Zara nodded, relieved. "They've had some schooling already. Emma reads quite well and James is learning." "Smart young uns," Hank commented approvingly. "That'll serve them well out here." After lunch, true to his word, Tucker brought out a gentle mare named Daisy for James's first riding lesson. The boy was both terrified and thrilled as Tucker lifted him onto the horse's back, then led him slowly around the corral while Zara and Emma watched from the fence. "He's a natural," Tucker told Zara as James grew more confident. "Look at how he's sitting straight back, relaxed hands." Zara felt a bittersweet pang, wishing Daniel could see his son's milestone. "His father would be proud," she murmured. Tucker glanced at her. "How did he die, if you don't mind my asking?" "Mining accident," Zara replied. "A tunnel collapse. They said it was quick, that he didn't suffer." "I don't know if that's true or if they just tell all the widows the same thing." Tucker was quiet for a moment, just the crunch of his boots on the dirt as he led Daisy around the corral. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "It's a hard life out here for a woman alone." "It's a hard life for anyone alone," Zara countered, thinking of what he had told her about his own past. Tucker nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. "That it is." The rest of the afternoon passed peacefully, with Tucker showing James more about the horses while Zara took inventory of the house, making mental notes about what needed attention. The place was clean but Spartan, clearly the home of men who valued function over comfort. There were no curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floors, no touches that made a house a home. That evening, Zara cooked a proper supper using the supplies Tucker had in his pantry. It wasn't fancy, just roast chicken, potatoes, and greens from the garden, but the men ate as if it were a feast. "Been a long time since we had cooking like this," Hank said appreciatively. "It's wonderful," Tucker agreed. "Thank you, Zara." She felt a flush of pleasure at the praise. "Tomorrow I'll bake bread," she promised, "and perhaps we could ride into town soon for more supplies. There are things I'll need if I'm to keep a proper kitchen." "Of course," Tucker said. "We can go day after tomorrow if that suits." As they cleared the table together after the meal, their hands brushed, and Zara felt an unexpected spark at the contact. She glanced up to find Tucker looking at her intently, a question in his eyes that she wasn't ready to answer. She stepped back. "I should get the children ready for bed." Tucker nodded, not pressing her. "Of course. Good night, Zara." "Good night," she replied, suddenly aware of the intimacy of sharing a home with this man who was still in many ways a stranger. As she tucked her children into bed, Emma asked, "Mama, are we going to live here forever now?" Zara smoothed her daughter's hair. "For a while at least. Until my debt is paid." "I like it here," James mumbled sleepily. "Mr. Tucker said I can help with the horses tomorrow." "Mr. Tucker is very kind," Zara agreed. Emma studied her mother's face. "Do you like him, Mama?" The question caught Zara off guard. "He's been good to us," she said carefully. "But do you like him, like you liked Papa?" "Oh, Emma," Zara sighed. That's not something I'm thinking about right now. We've only just met Mr. Tucker." "I think he likes you," Emma said with the simple directness of a child. "He looks at you the way Papa used to." Zara felt her cheeks warm. "That's enough talk for tonight. Sleep now, both of you. We have a busy day tomorrow." She kissed them both and left the room, her daughter's words echoing in her mind. Did Tucker look at her with interest? And if he did, what did it mean for them? He owned her debt contract. She was essentially his servant until the debt was paid. Any relationship beyond that would be complicated at best, impossible at worst. And yet, as she prepared for bed herself, Zara couldn't deny that there was something about Tucker Grayson that stirred feelings she had thought buried with her husband. His kindness to her children, his quiet strength, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, all of it appealed to her in a way she hadn't expected. She lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night, the distant lowing of cattle, the occasional nicker of a horse, the wind rustling through the cottonwoods. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she fell into a dreamless sleep. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Each morning, Zara rose early to prepare breakfast for the household. Tucker and Hank would head out to work the ranch, and Zara would tend to the house, the garden, and the chicken coop, with the children helping as they could. James spent every moment he could with the horses, soaking up Tucker's teachings like a sponge, while Emma split her time between helping her mother and playing with the kittens, which she had named despite Hank's warning not to get too attached to barn cats. True to his word, Tucker took them into Rawlins 2 days after their arrival. The town looked different to Zara, now no longer a place of humiliation and fear, but simply a trading post where they could obtain the supplies they needed. While Tucker handled business at the general store, Zara selected fabric for curtains, flour and sugar for baking, and a few small luxuries like cinnamon and vanilla that would make their meals more enjoyable. Emma chose a piece of blue ribbon for her hair, and James found a small wooden horse that Tucker insisted on purchasing for him. As they loaded their purchases into the wagon, a well-dressed woman approached them, her eyes narrowing as she took in Zara and the children. "Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes hard. "I heard you'd acquired help." Tucker's expression cooled. "Mrs. Blackwood, good afternoon." The woman's gaze raked over Zara. "So the rumors are true. You purchased the widow Lockwood's contract." "News travels fast," Tucker replied evenly. "Indeed it does." The woman, Mrs. Blackwood, turned her attention to Zara. "I hope you realize how fortunate you are, Mrs. Lockwood. Many would have separated you from your children, or worse." Zara lifted her chin. "I'm well aware of my good fortune, madam." Mrs. Blackwood's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course you are. Well, Mr. Grayson, I must say this explains why you've declined my dinner invitations. You found companionship elsewhere." Tucker's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Lockwood is my housekeeper, nothing more. And now, if you'll excuse us, We need to be getting back to the ranch." He helped Zara and the children into the wagon with careful courtesy, then climbed up himself. As they pulled away, Zara noticed the flush of anger on his cheeks. "I apologize for that," he said once they were clear of town. "Victoria Blackwood is. She's been trying to match me with her daughter for years." "There's no need to apologize," Zara assured him. "People will talk, they always do." Tucker glanced at her. "Does it bother you?" "What they might say about us?" Zara considered the question. "I'm more concerned about how it might affect the children. They've been through enough already." Tucker nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The people whose opinions I value know the truth. The rest can think what they like." As they rode back to the ranch, Zara found herself studying Tucker's profile, wondering about the man behind the quiet exterior. He clearly had a history with the townsfolk, particularly Mrs. Blackwood, but he kept his personal matters private. Just as he had stepped in to save her family, she suspected he had done other quiet acts of kindness that went unremarked upon. The encounter in town seemed to shift something between them. That evening, as they sat by the fire after the children were asleep, Tucker opened up more about his past. "I was with the Union Army," he told her as they sipped coffee. "Joined when I was 18, looking for purpose, I suppose. Saw things no man should see." "The war changed many men," Zara said softly. Tucker nodded. "When it ended, I wandered for a while. Worked as a ranch hand, a trapper, even rode shotgun on a stage coach for a spell. Then I remembered this place, my father's ranch. Came back to find it run down but still standing. Decided it was time to put down roots." "How long have you been back?" "7 years now. Hank joined me 5 years ago. He was injured in a cattle drive and the outfit he was with left him behind. I found him half dead and nursed him back to health. He's been with me ever since." "You have a habit of rescuing people," Zara observed with a small smile. Tucker looked at her over the rim of his mug. "Only those worth saving." The quiet intensity in his gaze made her heart quicken. "And how do you determine that?" "Instinct," he replied simply. "It hasn't led me wrong yet." They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their lives before they met. Zara told him about growing up in Missouri, about meeting Daniel when she was 19, about their dreams of building a life in the West. Tucker spoke of his boyhood on the ranch, of the sister he lost, of the war that had marked him in ways visible and invisible. As the fire burned low, Zara realized that in just a few days, this man had become someone she trusted, someone whose company she enjoyed. It was an unexpected development and one that both thrilled and frightened her. "I should retire," she said finally, setting aside her empty mug. "Morning comes early." Tucker rose when she did, a gesture of respect that touched her. "Zara," he said as she turned to go, "I want you to know that you and your children are safe here. No matter what, I'll keep my word. You'll stay together." She met his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. "I believe you," she said softly. "Good night, Tucker." As she closed the door to her room, Zara leaned against it, her heart pounding with an emotion she was not yet ready to name. The weeks passed, and summer deepened across the Wyoming territory. Under Zara's care, the ranch house transformed. Curtains appeared at the windows, fresh baked bread scented the kitchen, and flowers from the revitalized garden brightened the table. The children thrived in the open air and freedom of ranch life. James spent every possible moment with the horses, while Emma discovered a talent for gardening, carefully tending the vegetables and herbs under Zara's guidance. Tucker, watching this metamorphosis, found himself increasingly drawn to Zara. It wasn't just her beauty, though, that affected him more than he cared to admit, but her strength, her dignity, her unwavering devotion to her children. She had taken a situation that would have broken many women and turned it into something that resembled happiness. One evening in late July, Tucker returned from a long day of mending fences to find Zara alone in the garden, picking tomatoes in the golden light of sunset. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she had rolled up the sleeves of her dress against the summer heat. He paused at the edge of the garden, struck by the simple grace of her movements. "You've worked miracles with that garden," he said, approaching. Zara looked up, smiling when she saw him. "These tomatoes are the best I've ever grown. The soil here is rich." "My mother always said the same," Tucker replied, taking the basket from her and carrying it as they walked back toward the house. "She could grow anything. After she died, my father let the garden go. I never had the knack for it." "Emma has the touch," Zara said. "She knows instinctively which plants need water, which need sun. She reminds me of my grandmother that way." Tucker nodded. "She's a special child, both of them are." They reached the house and paused on the porch. The evening was mild, the air scented with pine and sage. From inside, they could hear Emma's laughter as she played some game with James. "They're happy here," Zara said, a note of wonder in her voice. "After Daniel died, I didn't think they'd ever be truly happy again." "Children are resilient," Tucker said. "And they have a mother who would move heaven and earth for them." Zara looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the golden light. "Thank you," she said softly, "for all of this, for giving us a home when we had none." Tucker set the basket down and, after a moment's hesitation, took her hand. "Zara, there's something I need to say." She waited, her expression expectant. "I want you to know that your debt contract, it doesn't matter to me. I bought it to keep your family together, not to hold you in servitude. As far as I'm concerned, you're free to go whenever you wish." Zara's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you and the children can stay here as long as you like, debt or no debt. This can be your home, not your prison." "Tucker," she breathed, her voice catching. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Not because you have to, but because you want to." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of feelings that had been growing steadily since that first day in Rawlins. "I want to stay," Zara whispered. Tucker's hand tightened around hers, and he stepped closer. His free hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch gentle as a breeze. Zara's eyes fluttered closed as he leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepening as she responded. The sound of the door opening broke them apart. Emma stood in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the scene before her. "Mama," she said uncertainly. Zara stepped back, her cheeks flushed. "Yes, darling." Emma looked between the adults, a slow smile spreading across her face. "James says supper's ready. Hank, let us set the table." "We'll be right in," Tucker said, his voice rough. As Emma disappeared back inside, Zara looked up at Tucker, a question in her eyes. "We should talk later," he said quietly, "after the children are asleep." She nodded, her heart pounding as she followed him inside, where the warm light of home awaited them. Supper that evening was a lively affair, with James recounting his day's adventures with the horses and Emma proudly displaying a drawing she had made of the kittens. Hank contributed tales from his younger days as a cowhand, carefully edited for the children's ears. Tucker was quieter than usual, his eyes often straying to Zara, who felt his gaze like a physical touch. After the meal, as Zara washed the dishes, she felt Tucker's presence beside her. He picked up a towel and began drying without a word, their shoulders occasionally brushing in the small space. The simple domesticity of the moment struck Zara how natural it felt to work alongside him, how comfortable their silence had become. Once the children were tucked in bed and Hank had retired to the bunkhouse, Zara found Tucker waiting on the porch, a lantern casting soft light in the gathering darkness. "Walk with me," he asked. She nodded, following him down the path that led toward the creek that bordered the eastern edge of the ranch. The night was warm and still, the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the distant call of an owl. "I've been thinking about this all evening," Tucker began when they reached the creek bank. "About us, about what I want to say to you." Zara waited, her heart in her throat. "I never expected to feel this way again," he continued. "After the war, I thought that part of me was dead, but you and your children have brought something back to life in me in this ranch." He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I'm falling in love with you, Zara Lockwood. I think I started falling the moment I saw you on that auction block, standing tall despite everything. You're the bravest, strongest woman I've ever known." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Tucker, you don't have to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I know it's soon, and I know you're still grieving Daniel. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know how I feel." "You didn't let me finish," Zara said, squeezing his hands. "What I was going to say is that I'm falling in love with you too. It frightens me how quickly it's happened, but I can't deny it." The hope that blazed in Tucker's eyes made her heart soar. "You mean that?" "I do," she whispered. "But you're right, it is soon, and there are the children to consider. They've lost so much already. I couldn't bear to hurt them if things don't work out between us." Tucker nodded solemnly. "I understand. We can take this as slowly as you need, Zara. I'm not going anywhere." He raised one hand to brush a tear from her cheek. "May I kiss you again?" he asked softly. In answer, Zara leaned forward, closing the distance between them. This time, their kiss was deeper, more certain. Tucker's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and Zara twined her arms around his neck, losing herself in the warmth and strength of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Tucker rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that again since the porch," he admitted with a small laugh. "So have I," Zara confessed, smiling up at him. They walked back to the house hand in hand, the future suddenly filled with possibilities that Zara had never dared to imagine after Daniel's death. As they reached the porch, Tucker paused. "Would it be all right if I spoke to the children? About us, I mean. Not everything, but I want them to know my intentions are honorable." Zara nodded, touched by his consideration. "I think that would be good. Emma already suspects something. She's very perceptive." "She takes after her mother," Tucker said with a smile, kissing Zara's hand before releasing it. "Good night, Zara." "Good night, Tucker." As Zara prepared for bed that night, she felt lighter than she had in months, perhaps years. The grief for Daniel would always be there, a part of her heart that would never fully heal. But alongside it now bloomed a new hope, a new love that felt like a gift she had never expected to receive. The following morning, Tucker spoke with the children after breakfast. He asked them to join him on the porch while Zara remained inside, giving them space but staying near enough to hear if they needed her. "I wanted to talk to you too about something important," Tucker began, his voice carrying through the open window. "You know how I feel about your mother, that I care for her very much. Are you going to marry her?" Emma asked directly, making Zara cover her mouth to stifle a laugh. Tucker cleared his throat. "Well, that's something that might happen someday if your mother agrees. But right now I wanted to ask how you would feel about that possibility." There was a pause, and Zara held her breath. "Would we still live here?" James asked. "Of course," Tucker assured him. "This would be your home for as long as you want it to be. Would you be our papa?" Emma's voice was smaller now, uncertain. Zara's heart constricted at the question. She moved closer to the window, ready to intervene if needed. "I would never try to replace your father," Tucker said gently. "He will always be your papa, and I know how much you loved him and how much he loved you. But I would hope that, in time, you might come to think of me as family too, not instead of him, but in addition to him." "Like having two papas?" James asked. One in heaven and one here. Something like that, Tucker agreed, his voice thick with emotion. Another pause followed, then Emma spoke again. I think Papa would like you, Mr. Tucker. He always said Mama deserved to be happy. Did he now? Tucker said softly. Uh-huh, and Mama smiles more when you're around. Zara pressed a hand to her heart, tears welling in her eyes at her daughter's perception. Well, that's good to know, Tucker said. So, you both would be all right if I were to court your mother properly. What does court mean? James asked. It means spending time together, getting to know each other better, seeing if we suit each other well enough to become a family someday. I think that would be nice, Emma decided. Me too, James added. Especially if you teach me more about horses. Tucker laughed. That I can promise, young man. When they came back inside, all three wore expressions of quiet satisfaction. Tucker's eyes met Zara's, and a wordless understanding passed between them. They would move forward together, with the blessing of her children. August passed in a golden haze of long days and warm nights. Tucker courted Zara with careful respect, always mindful of the children's presence and her still healing heart. They took family picnics by the creek, rode together across the ranch lands, and spent evenings on the porch, watching the stars emerge while the children played nearby. Tucker proved to be a natural with the children, firm but kind, offering guidance without overstepping. He taught James to ride with confidence and patience, and helped Emma build a special garden plot of her very own. In the evenings, he read to them from his small collection of books, his deep voice bringing the stories to life as Zara sat nearby, sewing or mending. As for Zara and Tucker, their connection deepened with each passing day. Their conversations ranged from childhood memories to dreams for the future, from philosophical discussions about faith and justice to practical plans for the ranch. They discovered shared values and complementary strengths, and Zara found herself thinking more and more that this unexpected love might be even stronger than her first. One evening in early September, as they sat together on the porch after the children were asleep, Tucker took Zara's hand, his expression serious. There's something I need to tell you, he said. Something about my past that you should know. Zara nodded, concerned by his tone. You can tell me anything, Tucker. He took a deep breath. When I came back from the war, I wasn't in a good place. The things I'd seen, the things I'd done, they haunted me. I started drinking heavily, got into fights. One night in Denver, I nearly beat a man to death. Zara's hand tightened around his, but she remained silent, letting him continue. I was arrested, spent 6 months in jail. It was there that I met a preacher who helped me see that I was destroying myself. When I got out, I decided to change my life. That's when I came back here to start fresh. He looked at her directly, his blue eyes troubled. I've never told anyone here about that time. Not even Hank knows the full story. But I wanted you to know before we go any further. I'm not that man anymore, but he's part of my history. Zara considered his words, the weight of his confession. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. We all have parts of our past we're not proud of, Tucker. What matters is who you are now, and I know who that is, a good man with a good heart. Relief washed over his features. I was afraid you might look at me differently. I do look at you differently, Zara said softly. I see you more clearly now, more completely, and I love you all the more for your honesty. Tucker drew her close, his kiss tender and grateful. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, Zara. I want to build a life with you and the children if you'll have me. Is that a proposal, Tucker Grayson? Zara asked, her heart pounding. He smiled. Not quite yet. When I propose, you'll know it, but it's coming, soon as I can get into town for a proper ring. Zara laughed softly. I don't need a ring to know my own heart. Maybe not, but you deserve one all the same. Their courtship continued through September as the leaves began to turn and a crispness entered the air. The children started attending the small schoolhouse 5 miles away, with Tucker or Hank driving them each morning and picking them up in the afternoon. Miss Franklin, the teacher, took an immediate liking to Emma and James and reported to Zara that they were both bright students who were quickly making friends. With the children at school, Zara had more time to help with the ranch work. She learned to ride better, accompanied Tucker on his rounds, and even helped with the fall cattle drive, cooking for the small crew of men Tucker hired for the occasion. The work was hard but satisfying, and Zara found herself stronger and more capable than she had known. October brought the first frosts, painting the landscape in reds and golds. Tucker made a trip into Rawlins alone, returning with a secretive smile that Zara pretended not to notice. That weekend, he proposed a family outing to a special spot he knew in the foothills, where a natural hot spring bubbled up among the rocks. The day dawned clear and cool as they set out, the four of them on horseback, with a picnic packed in their saddlebags. James rode his own pony now, a small bay named Copper that Tucker had been training especially for him. Emma rode double with Zara, chattering excitedly about the hot spring and whether they could swim in it. When they reached the spot, Zara gasped in delight. A small, steaming pool nestled among pine trees, with a view of the valley spread out below them. They set up their picnic on a flat rock nearby, and after they ate, Tucker suggested that the children might like to explore a small cave he knew of just a short walk away. "Can we, Mama?" James asked eagerly. "As long as you're careful and stay with Mr. Tucker," Zara agreed. To her surprise, Tucker shook his head. "Actually, I thought I might stay here with your mother for a bit. Emma, you're old enough to keep an eye on your brother, aren't you?" "The cave is just over that ridge, not more than 100 yards. You can't miss it." Emma straightened, proud of the responsibility. "Yes, sir, I'll keep him safe." After extracting promises to be careful and return in half an hour, Zara watched as the children set off, Emma holding her brother's hand and pointing out interesting rocks and plants along the way. "You trust them alone?" she asked Tucker. "They're good children and it's safe terrain," he replied. "Besides, I wanted a moment alone with you." He took her hand, leading her to the edge of the hot spring where the warm mist rose in the cool autumn air. "This place has always been special to me," he said. "My father brought me here when I was a boy, told me it was where he proposed to my mother. Said the water here had special properties that promises made beside it would last forever." Zara's heart began to race as Tucker turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Zara Lockwood," he said, his voice deep with emotion. "From the moment I saw you, something in my soul recognized something in yours. I've known love before and loss, but what I feel for you is different, deeper, stronger, more complete. You've brought light back into my life, into this ranch that was just a place until you made it a home." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a simple but beautiful gold ring set with a small diamond. "This was my mother's," he said. "I've been keeping it safe, waiting for the right woman to wear it again." Kneeling before her, Tucker held up the ring. "I love you, Zara. I love your strength, your kindness, your unwavering devotion to your children. I promise to cherish you, to protect you and Emma and James, to be the husband and father this family deserves. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Zara's eyes as she looked down at this man who had saved her in more ways than one. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Tucker, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms, kissing her with all the passion and tenderness he possessed. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, they heard cheering from the ridge above them. Emma and James stood there, grinning widely, having witnessed the proposal. They came running down the slope, throwing themselves into a family embrace that left all four laughing and crying at once. "Does this mean you're going to be our new papa?" James asked Tucker directly. Tucker knelt to the boy's level. "If that's all right with you," he said seriously. James considered this for a moment, then nodded. "I think my first papa would say it's okay. He always told me to take care of Mama and Emma, but now you can help me do that." Tucker's eyes glistened as he pulled the boy into a hug. "We'll take care of them together, son." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Rawlins, with Hank serving as best man and the children as attendants. The townsfolk came out in force, curious to witness the union of the quiet rancher and the widow he had saved from servitude. Even Victoria Blackwood attended, though her smile was tight as she congratulated the couple. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, with Tucker and Zara exchanging vows they had written themselves. Tucker promised not only to love and cherish Zara, but also to be a father to Emma and James, to honor the memory of Daniel while creating new family memories together. Zara, in turn, promised to stand by Tucker through all of life's challenges, to make their house a home filled with love and laughter, to be his partner in all things. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "Mr. Grayson, you may kiss your bride." As Tucker's lips met hers, Zara felt a sense of completion, of coming home after a long journey. The path that had led her here had been marked by grief and hardship, but standing in the circle of her new husband's arms, with her children beaming beside them, she knew that the journey had been worth every step. The celebration continued at the ranch, where Hank and several neighboring women had prepared a feast. Music and dancing lasted well into the evening, with Tucker surprising everyone by being quite skilled at the waltz. "Where did you learn to dance like that?" Zara asked as he twirled her around the barn floor, which had been cleared for the occasion. "My mother taught me," Tucker replied with a smile. "She said no son of hers would grow up unable to properly escort a lady around a dance floor." "She would be proud of the man you've become," Zara told him softly. Tucker's eyes darkened with emotion. "I hope so. I wish she could have met the children. She would have loved you all." As the evening wound down, the guests departed with good wishes and knowing smiles. Hank had arranged to take the children to a neighbor's ranch for the night, giving the newlyweds privacy for their first evening as husband and wife. After the children had been sent off with hugs and promises to see them tomorrow, Tucker swept Zara into his arms and carried her across the threshold of their home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Grayson," he murmured against her hair. "I've been home since the day you brought me here," Zara replied, kissing him with all the love in her heart. That night, as they lay together in the soft darkness of their room, Zara marveled at how life could change so dramatically in just a few months. From the depths of despair on that auction block to this moment of perfect happiness, it seemed almost miraculous. "What are you thinking about?" Tucker asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "About how far we've come," Zara answered honestly. "About how close I came to losing everything and how you saved us." Tucker propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with serious eyes. "You saved yourself, Zara, and me too. I was just living before you came existing, not really alive. You brought life back to this ranch to me." Zara reached up to touch his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I think perhaps we saved each other," he smiled, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I can accept that." As winter settled over the Wyoming territory, the Grayson Ranch became a haven of warmth and happiness. The house, once Spartan and merely functional, was now truly a home, filled with the sounds of children's laughter, the smell of home-cooked meals, and the thousand small touches that spoke of a family's love. Emma and James thrived under the combined care of their mother and new father. Tucker proved to be a patient and devoted parent, firm when necessary but always fair, never trying to replace Daniel's memory but creating his own place in their hearts. By Christmas, James was calling him Pa without hesitation, while Emma, more reserved by nature, still called him Tucker but looked to him with growing trust and affection. Zara watched the evolution of their family with a full heart. There were challenges. Of course, days when the children missed their father acutely. Days when the harsh Wyoming weather made ranch life difficult. Days when Tucker's wartime nightmares returned, and he needed space to regain his equilibrium. But through it all, the love between them only deepened, strengthened by each obstacle overcome together. In early spring, as the first green shoots appeared in Zara's garden, she discovered she was expecting a child. When she shared the news with Tucker, his joy was boundless. He lifted her off her feet and twirled her around the kitchen, then knelt to press his ear against her still flat stomach, as if he might already hear the tiny heartbeat within. "A baby," he whispered in wonder. "Our baby." The children were equally excited when told they would have a new brother or sister come autumn. Emma immediately began making plans for the baby's corner of her room, while James solemnly promised to teach the baby to ride as soon as it was big enough. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer months. Zara, already flourishing in her role as ranch wife and mother, seemed to bloom even more with new life growing inside her. Tucker watched over her with tender concern, insisting she rest more and hiring a young woman from town to help with the heavier housework. In September, just as the leaves began to turn, Zara went into labor. The local midwife was summoned, and after a long but uncomplicated birth, Tucker and Zara welcomed a son into the world. They named him Daniel Tucker Grayson, honoring both the father the older children had lost and the father who had chosen them as his own. As Tucker held his son for the first time, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, he made a silent vow to the child, to love him, to protect him, to teach him to be a man of integrity and compassion. And he made another vow, as well, to ensure that this child and his siblings would grow up in a world where no person could be auctioned like property, where families remained whole, where love and respect were the foundation of society. It was a big dream for a simple rancher, but looking at his family, at Zara smiling tiredly from the bed, at Emma and James peering wide-eyed at their new brother, at the tiny life cradled in his arms, Tucker knew that dreams could come true in the most unexpected ways. 5 years later, the Grayson Ranch had nearly doubled in size and prosperity. Tucker's innovative ranching methods and Zara's careful management of the household finances had allowed them to purchase adjacent land when it became available. The small family had grown as well. Little Daniel was now joined by a 2-year-old sister, Hope, named for what had sustained them through the darkest times. On a warm summer evening, as the sun cast long golden rays across the valley, the family gathered on the expanded front porch of their home. Hank, now more family than employee, whittled a small wooden horse for Hope, while Emma, now 13 and growing into a beautiful young woman, read aloud from a book of poetry. James, 11 and the spitting image of his birth father, practiced rope tricks Tucker had taught him, while Daniel toddled after his big brother, trying to imitate his movements. Hope sat on Zara's lap, playing with the locket that contained miniature portraits of both of her fathers, the one she would never know except through stories, and the one who had chosen to love her mother and siblings when they needed it most. Tucker sat beside his wife, his arm around her shoulders, watching their family with quiet pride. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked softly. "That day in Rawlins." Zara leaned into his embrace, her heart full to bursting with gratitude and love. "Never in my wildest dreams," she admitted. "I was just hoping to keep my children. I never dared hope for all of this." Tucker kissed her temple, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saying yes, for taking a chance on us." "Thank you for seeing us," Zara replied, turning to meet his gaze, "for seeing our worth when no one else did." As the sun sank behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold, the Grayson family remained on their porch, bound together by love that had been forged in adversity and tempered by time. Their story, which had begun in the desperate moments of an auction block, had become a testament to the enduring power of compassion, courage, and the family bonds that could be both born and chosen. And in the years that followed, as the West changed and grew around them, as their children matured and began families of their own, Tucker and Zara Grayson remained steadfast in their commitment to each other and to the values that had brought them together: justice, kindness, and the unwavering belief that love, true love, could overcome even the darkest circumstances and build something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of despair.